All right, welcome in everyone. Today we are diving into the life and crimes of David Dowler.
Oh, this should be good.
Yeah, so you guys shared this Wikipedia article on him and some newspaper clippings from his trial.
Yep.
And it looks like he was actually convicted of murder back in 1988, but there's some really interesting stuff here.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, like he claimed to be an undercover FBI agent, and there were a bunch of suspicious deaths around him.
Huh.
And apparently he knew about all these unusual poisons like chloroform and cyanide, so
That's pretty creepy.
yeah. It makes you wonder, like, how did this seemingly regular guy turn into a killer?
Right.
And how did he get away with it for so long?
Good questions.
So let's start with his early life. He was born in '53 in Albuquerque, New Mexico,
Okay.
son of a USAF colonel, active in school. He even had a black belt in karate.
Wow.
I know, right? It's
Amazing.
crazy how different this is from the crimes he was convicted of.
It's fascinating how someone's life can take such a dark turn.
Totally. And his brother even described him as someone who wouldn't hurt a fly. Yeah. He was really into electronics, too. Like, he used his ham radio skills during a riot to connect emergency services when the phone lines went down.
Oh, wow. So he actually helped people.
It's almost heroic, right?
It makes you think about the complexities of human nature. Like, here's this guy who seemed to use his technical skills for good,
Yeah.
but then those same skills, especially his knowledge of chemistry, end up being part of the whole murder investigation.
Exactly. So after all that, he goes to the University of New Mexico,
Okay.
studies electrical engineering, physics, chemistry, math, gets married, has 2 daughters,
Okay.
moves to Midland, Texas, gets a job as a sales representative.
So like normal life stuff.
Right. It's almost like the typical American dream.
Until it wasn't.
Yeah, until it all went wrong.
So when did things start to go south?
Well, that's where these relationships come in. Dowler becomes friends with Lisa Krieg, and then later he gets close to this other woman, Liza Chandler, and her ex-husband, Juan Antonio Casillas.
Okay, and these names come up in the article.
Yeah, these are the people who end up dying.
Oh, right. I remember that part.
Yeah. So let's talk about the deaths, because this is where it all starts to unravel. First, you've got Lisa Krieg. She's found dead in her home in 1983.
Okay.
The initial autopsy said it might have been anorexia, but they couldn't figure out exactly what killed her.
So they didn't really know.
Yeah. And get this, on the same day they find Lisa's body, Dowler calls her ex-husband, Kim,
Okay.
and tells him that Lisa killed herself with cyanide that Dowler had given her.
Wow, hold on. He just admitted to that.
Yeah, and he even said he cleaned her body so it wouldn't look like a suicide.
This is getting weird.
I know, right? But it gets even weirder. He tells Tim that he's an undercover FBI agent working with Lisa.
An FBI agent. Seriously.
Yeah, and he said he had to kill some assassins who were after Lisa because of some secret government operation.
Wait, is he serious?
That's what he told Tim.
Why would someone make up a story like that? Especially in that situation, right?
Exactly. It's so bizarre.
And why would anyone believe him?
Well, Tim actually explained later that he didn't go to the police because he was scared they wouldn't believe him.
Oh, I see. He thought they'd think he was crazy or something.
Yeah. It makes you wonder if Dowler was playing on that, you know?
Like he knew it was so out there that nobody would take it seriously.
Yeah, maybe he was being manipulative.
That's a scary thought.
I know. So anyway, sadly, this wasn't the last death connected to Dowler.
Oh, right. There were more.
Yeah. In 1986, Juan Antonio Casillas, who was Liza Chandler's ex-husband and Dowler's business partner,
Okay.
is found dead at home. And guess what? They found cyanide in his system, too.
Wow. So just like Lisa.
Yep. And they also found traces of something called amyl nitrite, which is like those poppers things.
What are those for?
Apparently they can be used to relax muscles or something.
Hmm.
But here's the weird thing. Cyanide poisoning is super fast acting,
Right.
but amyl nitrite can actually delay the effects.
Oh, so that makes it even more suspicious.
Exactly. So now we've got 2 deaths, both linked to Dowler, both involving cyanide.
This is crazy.
I know, right? But it's the 3rd death that really put him in the spotlight.
Oh, this is the one that finally did him in.
Yeah. So in 1987, Liza Chandler is found dead at her home.
Okay.
And this time, the autopsy says she was poisoned with chloroform.
Chloroform.
Hmm.
Like the stuff they use in old movies to knock people out.
Yeah, exactly. And they ruled it a homicide, so this time there's no question about it. Somebody killed her.
Wow, that's really dark.
Yeah. And here's the thing. The police found out that Chandler and some of her friends, including Dowler, would get together and inhale chloroform at her place.
They would what?
Yeah, apparently they thought it was like relaxing or something. They would talk about their problems while they were high on chloroform.
Oh, wow, that's messed up.
Yeah, really dangerous. But it becomes a big deal because now Dowler had access to the substance that killed Leza.
Right, that can't be good for him.
Yeah, especially with those other deaths already on the radar. It made him the prime suspect. And remember, at this point, they're only looking into Leza's death, but then they start digging into the deaths of 3 other people connected to Dowler.
There were even more.
Yeah, including this woman named Cassie Hicks, who collapsed at some event in 1986.
So he might be connected to even more deaths.
It's a scary thought. Like, how many other victims could there be?
Yeah, that's really disturbing.
I know. And so all of that led to Dowler's arrest.
Okay, that makes sense.
But here's the thing. Even though it seems like there's a lot of evidence against him, Dowler's family and friends were saying he was totally innocent.
Really?
Yeah, they
Huh.
described him as kind, gentle, incapable of hurting anyone.
Wow, so they totally believed in him.
They were convinced he was being framed.
That's wild. I mean, you've got this guy who seems like a good person, a hero even, but then you have this other side of him connected to all these deaths.
Right, it's like a split personality or something.
Yeah, like 2 completely different people.
Yeah, but-
Yeah, makes you wonder if you can really ever know somebody, you know? Like, how could someone hide that kind of darkness and pretend everything's normal?
That's the big question, right? Like, is there some kind of switch that flips?
Yeah.
So let's get into the trial, because things get even more confusing. There are all these conflicting stories, and there's not a lot of hard evidence to prove what really happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a mess. So what about those chloroform bottles they found at Dowler's house?
Right. Well, the detectives said they found 2 empty chloroform bottles when they searched his place.
Okay.
And that was a big deal, obviously, because of how Leza Chandler died.
Yeah, that's a pretty clear connection.
Right. It tied him to the actual substance used in the murder.
But Dowler's lawyer, Thomas Hirsch, he said the chemicals weren't for hurting anyone.
Interesting. What was his story then?
He said they were for making fireworks.
Fireworks. Come on, who's he kidding?
Yeah, it sounds a little far-fetched, right? But he even tried to blame Leza Chandler's ex-husband, Kyle.
Oh, so he was pointing the finger at someone else.
Yeah, like a classic defense tactic, right? Create doubt, blame someone else.
Yeah, makes sense. But was there any truth to those claims?
Well, one of Dowler's friends, Pat Carter, testified that he had seen other people using chloroform at Dowler's place,
Okay.
but he never saw Dowler actually give it to anyone.
That's tricky.
Yeah, it makes things even more murky. Like, if others were using chloroform recreationally, could it have been an accident?
I mean, it's possible.
Or was Dowler involved, but just really good at covering his tracks?
Yeah, I see what you mean. It definitely raises more questions.
And this is the big problem the prosecution had. They couldn't directly link Dowler to the poisonings. No fingerprints on the bottles, no witnesses.
So they were working with circumstantial evidence.
Exactly. It's not like they caught him red-handed.
That's got to be tough for the prosecution.
Yeah, because the defense can always argue that just because he's around doesn't mean he's the killer.
Right. Just being there doesn't make you guilty.
But remember Lisa Krieg's ex-husband, Tim?
Oh, yeah. The one who got that weird phone call?
Yeah, he finally decided to talk, and he testified about those creepy calls from Dowler right after Lisa died.
Oh, that's right.
And don't forget, Dowler admitted to cleaning Lisa's body to make it look like she died naturally.
Yeah, that's not something an innocent person does.
Right. It's pretty suspicious.
For sure.
Yeah.
Like, why would you even get involved like that unless you had something to hide?
Yeah, it's not like he was just trying to help.
Right.
And while the defense was trying to pin it on Kyle Chandler, the prosecution brought in a psychiatrist, Dr. Juan Garcia,
Okay.
and he said that Kyle wasn't a violent person, that he just had depression.
So they were trying to take away any other suspects.
Exactly. They wanted the jury to focus only on Dowler.
Smart move.
So even though they didn't have that direct link to the poisonings, they had all this circumstantial evidence.
Yeah.
And then Dowler's own strange behavior, like the phone calls and cleaning the body,
Right. It all adds up.
it painted a pretty bad picture.
And I guess the jury saw it that way, too.
Yeah, they found him guilty of murdering Leza Chandler, and he got life in prison.
Wow. Life in prison.
Yeah, a pretty big fall for a guy who seemed to have it all.
It's crazy.
But it makes you think, right? Like, how much should we rely on circumstantial evidence?
Yeah, it's not always black and white.
And can a pattern of behavior really be enough to convict someone?
It's definitely a tricky area of the law.
For sure. And here's another thing. Dowler still says he's innocent.
Really? Even after all this time?
Yeah, and he's actually eligible for parole.
So he could get out.
It's possible. It just shows you that even when there's a guilty verdict, there can still be a lot of unanswered questions.
Absolutely. I mean, the system isn't perfect.
So here we are, a guy convicted of murder, mostly based on circumstantial evidence, and he still claims he didn't do it.
It's a real head-scratcher. Like, what's the truth here? Can you ever really be sure? Especially when it's so hard to tell who's guilty and who's innocent.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, right? What is truth?
I don't know if we'll ever have the answer to that one.
But I think it's important to keep asking the questions, you know?
Oh, absolutely. That's what this whole deep dive is about, right?
Exactly. So let's step back for a second and look at the bigger picture. What can we learn from this whole Dowler story?
Good question.
Like, what does it tell us about people, the secrets they keep, and how someone who seems so normal can be hiding something so dark?
Yeah, it's a reminder that you never really know what's going on behind closed doors.
Seriously. We've been digging into this David Dowler case, and I gotta say, even though he was convicted, something still feels off.
I get that.
Like, are there any parts of this story that maybe we should look at again?
Oh, yeah, definitely. The whole poison thing is really interesting, right? We know Dowler was into chemistry,
Yeah.
but the specific types of cyanide and chloroform they found, that raises some questions.
What do you mean?
Well, sodium cyanide, that's the deadliest kind, and it wasn't easy to get back then.
So are you saying someone with Dowler's knowledge could have gotten their hands on this stuff?
That's the thing. We don't really know. The sources don't go into detail about how he might have got it.
Yeah, that's true.
But he clearly knew about these poisons, how dangerous they were.
So you're saying it wasn't just a coincidence?
I think it points to him planning this out, you know?
Yeah.
It's not random.
And then there's the question of why he did it. If he really killed these people, what was his motive?
Right, why? Was it like we were saying earlier, did he just want to control everything?
Maybe. Or was there something else going on?
It's hard to say for sure. The sources don't really give us a clear answer.
They don't, do they?
But think about it. He had a normal childhood, a good job, a family that loved him.
So what went wrong?
Exactly. It's like, where did the darkness come from? Maybe there were things we don't know about, hidden trauma or anger that just built up over time.
Right. It's like a puzzle with missing pieces.
Exactly. We have the facts of the case, what people said, the evidence.
But we don't really understand what was going on in his head.
And without that, it's hard to say we've really got to the bottom of this.
True. Maybe we never will.
Maybe not. But trying to understand is important, right? Even if we don't get all the answers.
Yeah, I think so.
By going through all of this, looking at different perspectives, we learn more about how people work, how easily we can be fooled, and how even seemingly normal lives can have these dark secrets.
That's a good point.
It reminds us that the truth can be hard to find.
It's not always clear-cut.
Right. And even with investigations and trials, sometimes we're left with doubt.
And maybe that's okay.
I think so. It's in that space between what we know for sure and what we don't that we can really learn and grow.
So what are we left with at the end of all this?
I think the biggest thing is that we may never know for sure what made David Dowler do what he did.
Yeah, but we've thought about a lot of possibilities.
Exactly. And that's what matters. By asking questions and being open to different ideas, we get a better understanding of the world and the people in it.
Well said. This deep dive may not have given us all the answers, but it's certainly given us a lot to think about.
For sure. The David Dowler case shows us that good and evil aren't always easy to separate.
And that we should never stop searching for the truth, even when it's hard to find.
Absolutely. And to everyone listening, keep digging into this case, look at the sources, and decide what you think.
That's what it's all about, right?
The best part of a deep dive isn't just what we learn, it's the questions we're left with, the mysteries that stick with us.
That's a perfect way to put it. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the David Dowler case.
It was my pleasure.
And until next time, keep those minds curious, those questions coming, and remember, sometimes the most interesting truths are the ones that stay hidden.